Hi, my name's Eric. I'll be reading you selections from the e-edition of today's Cape Cod Times. Today's date is Tuesday, July 23rd of 2024. We'll start with the weather, as we always do when we're reading the Cape Cod Times. And across the Cape and Islands today, you can expect more humidity, some morning rain, cloudy, and not as warm. A high of 76 this afternoon, a low of 69 in the overnight, with it being cloudy and humid. On Wednesday, a couple of thunderstorms expected, high of 77, a low of 71. On Thursday, a couple of thunderstorms expected, and you can just rinse and repeat. High of 82, low of 68 on Thursday with those thunderstorms. On Friday, sun followed by increasing clouds and potential rain. Saturday, mostly sunny, nice day, high of 81, low of 68. So it'll clear up for the weekend, but we have a couple of wet days ahead of us. Sunrise today is at 5:27 a.m. It will set at 8:08 p.m. We'll have 14 hours and 41 minutes of daylight. Moonrise is at 9:54 p.m. It'll set at 7:49 a.m. Heading to the front of the paper, where the lottery results and the news is kept, and we read the lottery results because, well, somebody asked for them. If there's something you would like read to people who are blind or print disabled, you can email us at info@audiblelocalledger.org or call us at 508-539-2030, and we'll consider reading it. And if you miss any of the information that we share in our readings, you can always go to audiblelocalledger.org, and in the upper right corner is the Archived Readings tab. Click on that. You'll find a week's worth of our newspaper readings so that you can catch up on anything that you might have missed. And our grocery guides are there so that you can find out what's on sale at the grocery store. All of that free for people who are blind or print disabled at audiblelocalledger.org, the Archived Readings tab. For the latest results of the lottery, we go to masslottery.com because Cape Cod Times goes to press too early to give you the latest results, and if you ask for them, you certainly deserve them. Numbers game for Monday, July 22nd, in the midday. The numbers were 2, 5, 2, 9. Again, yesterday's midday drawing results, 2, 5, 2, 9. The evening drawing for Monday, July 22nd's numbers game, 2, 5, 3, 6. Evening drawing last night of the numbers game, 2, 5, 3, 6. Powerball results for Monday, July 22nd, 31, 36, 56, 58, and 69, with 20 the bonus number. Mass cash results for Monday, July 22nd, 19, 20, 25, 31, and 33. Megabucks results for Monday, July 22nd, 15, 20, 24, 30, 31, and 40. And Lucky for Life rounds out our lottery results for Monday, July 22nd with 17, 19, 20, 28, and 29, with 11 the bonus number. Good luck to all who play. Remember us if you win. Heading to the front page of today's Cape Cod Times, again, today's date, Tuesday, July 23rd of 2024. What is food sovereignty is the headline. Mashpee Tribe to Train on Baby Nourishment by Rachel Devaney. Mashpee Wampanoag tribal member Rachel Lovely was at home and in labor with her second child in 2022. She decided to build a prayer fire which would remain lit throughout her entire labor. Lovely felt certain ancestors would hear her prayers and help her through childbirth. I went out and prayed at the fire and offered tobacco, said Lovely. That was my way of incorporating ceremony and tradition into the birth of my child. Between 2023 and 24, the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe has welcomed about 100 babies into its nation, according to Mashpee Wampanoag tribal member Alexandra Lopes Pocknet. It's probably the biggest baby boom we've had in a century, said Lopes Pocknet. With so many babies being born into the fold and limited traditional tribal knowledge surrounding childbirth and lactation ceremony, Lovely and Lopes Pocknet, along with Mashpee Wampanoag tribal member Keturah Peters, are offering an Indigenous lactation counselor training, which will run from September 23rd to 27th. Classes will be held at the Wampanoag Language Reclamation Project in Mashpee. Lactation training can help break the overuse of baby feeding formula and help strengthen the tribal community, Lovely said. The knowledge the training will bring to Wampanoag people and tribal people from other communities is invaluable to growing families, said Lovely. When a family is able to support and nourish their babies by breastfeeding, they're able to independently provide those babies with the most adequate nutrition, the strongest medicine, and the safest sustenance, said Lovely. The training's being offered to Indigenous people from the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, but also men and women from other tribal communities. Applications must be submitted by August 8th, according to the event's flyer. Lovely and Lopes Pocknet are also fundraising to ensure that all meals can be provided to participants. The training, which is funded by a grant from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, will be led by the founding executive director of Hummingbird Indigenous Family Services, Cami Goldhammer, and Kimberly Moore-Salas, a lactation consultant at Maricopa Integrated Health System. The training will offer attendees an opportunity to bond with other Native women and their entire families, said Lopes Pocknet. These are just the beginning steps we're taking to ensure health and longevity when it comes to reproductive rights for Indigenous people in our homelands. Goldhammer, who is Sisseton Wahpeton, and Moore-Salas, who is Dene, created the first and only lactation counselor training created by Native people for Native communities. The duo have trained roughly 550 Indigenous lactation counselors across the continent, according to the Hummingbird Indigenous Family Services website. Mashpee is one of 3 Indigenous communities that will receive the training during the CDC grant cycle. There are about 20 slots available, said Lovely. The training will cover how to breastfeed, alternative feeding methods, father and family support, historical trauma, and parenting practices, and how food sovereignty is connected to breastfeeding and lactation. We will be unpacking our own personal histories and community histories to see how that relates to our views on feeding our children, Lovely said. There's potential trauma that comes through us genetically, just by being born Indigenous. On the 5th day of the class, Lovely said attendees will be certified in lactation and breastfeeding practices. The hope, she said, is that these women will then use the skills and knowledge they've gained in their tribal communities. It will then be our collective responsibility to help community members and share these teachings, she said. What is food sovereignty? Food sovereignty is a particularly important aspect of the training, Lovely said. For generations, baby feeding formula has been normalized and pushed on new mothers by doctors and family members, she said. If you can feed a baby with just your body, and you're not depending on formula, and you have your community standing behind you, that's being sovereign, said Lovely. Formula has also faced shortages in recent years, said Lopes Pocknet, and has also become extremely expensive. In 2022, hundreds of tribal women in the local community relied on donated breast milk because baby formula couldn't be found. The knowledge people will learn in the training brings us back to a more historic way of nourishing our children, said Lopes Pocknet. When the training was announced by Goldhammer and Moore-Salas, hundreds of tribal communities applied to have the training taught in their territory, said Lovely. Competition was fierce, she said. In addition to the application, Lopes Pocknet, Lovely, and Peters also submitted a letter that served as collective testimony about why local tribal communities wanted the training to be held in Mashpee. The group collected about 76 signatures. The community recognized the value that breastfeeding and chest feeding holds, and the bonds it creates in a family, said Lovely. Also, the food sovereignty it ensures, the health outcomes it guarantees, and the sacredness that it carries. Mashpee Wampanoag clan mothers also signed a letter of support. In the letter, clan mothers, including Anita Mother Bear Peters of the Bear Clan and Marlene Lopez of the Rabbit Clan, said their trainings were vital to the Mashpee tribal community and beyond. A strong, knowledgeable, supportive community surrounding a lactating parent is often the most crucial component to a parent being successful in offering that milk medicine to a baby, read the letter. Clan mothers also said that the training will guarantee that local Native communities will have knowledgeable and competent individuals ready to support new parents. This training fits right into this growing interest, especially at a time where we as a people are growing so rapidly, read the letter. For Lovely, the community support has been one of the most important aspects of holding the training in Mashpee Wampanoag territory. This is a huge opportunity to focus on and increase the resources we have in our community, said Lovely. It's about the passion we have to help our people. It will do nothing but strengthen our tribe in a very healthy way. The next headline from the Cape Cod Times of Tuesday, July 23rd reads, Fundamental Fight for Freedom. LGBTQ rights are under attack, Harris says at Cape Visit, by Rachel Devaney in Provincetown. When Vice President Kamala Harris appeared at the Pilgrim Monument in Provincetown Museum on Saturday, she recalled her former campaign manager, Jim Rivaldo, who also managed campaigns for gay rights leader Harvey Milk during the 1970s. During her run for San Francisco District Attorney in 2003, Rivaldo often talked about Milk's approach to politics, Harris said. Quote, he talked about how Harvey would say that those who oppose progress will always try to suggest that a movement for freedom is somehow subversive, Harris said to a crowd of about 1,000 people in a tent overlooking Provincetown Harbor. Freedom strengthens who we are as a nation when we fight to expand rights rather than to strip them away, Harris said as the crowd erupted into applause. Harris arrived in Provincetown at about 2:30 p.m. for a reception with Vice President Kamala Harris, which was co-hosted by Brian Raffinelli and his husband Mark Walsh. U.S. Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg, Governor Maura Healey, U.S. Senator Edward Markey, and Boston Mayor Michelle Wu all attended. In addition to Harris, Buttigieg and his husband Chasten, Delaware State Senator Sarah McBride, Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll, Healey, Raffinelli, and Walsh all gave remarks during the event, according to White House staff. Actress Jennifer Coolidge of The White Lotus and American Pie also spoke during the fundraiser, and Broadway actress and singer Adrienne Warren performed 2 songs in Harris's honor. According to the White House, the event raised about $2 million to benefit the Biden Victory Fund. For Buttigieg, it was important for event attendees to be fully participatory in the upcoming presidential election. There has never been a full-scale, truly representative, fully participatory, multiracial democracy, said Buttigieg during his speech, but we're building one right now. Throughout her speech, Harris encouraged event attendees to support President Joe Biden's re-election campaign. We must be intentional about building community and reminding people that they're not alone, said Harris. We must be committed to making our voices heard. We're all in this together. While the election's been challenging, said Raffinelli, Americans can save democracy. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have the collective strength and resilience to weather this storm, said Raffinelli. They can lead us to a better future. During her time on stage, Harris mentioned the importance of fighting for LGBTQ rights. Her parents, she said, often brought her to civil rights marches when she was a child. The experience, she said, prepared her to fight for all people. When it comes to the fight for LGBTQ rights, I know it's a fundamental fight for freedom. You should be able to love and to be who you are openly and with pride, said Harris, to be free from discrimination and bigotry and hate, the freedom to simply be. Rights of LGBTQ people are under attack, Harris said. White supremacists, she said, have been showing up to pride festivals armed with assault weapons. Transgender people, especially transgender women of color, are facing record levels of deadly violence, she said. And in schools across the nation, students endure bullying and harassment. We see extremists fan the flames of hate and homophobia for political gain, said Harris. In states like Florida and Iowa, they've passed don't say gay laws, she said. During his speech, Raffanelli recalled that in 2004, when Harris was district attorney in San Francisco, she officiated some of the first same-sex marriages in the country. As a senator, Raffanelli said, she also increased legislation for access to PrEP, a medication that can help prevent HIV infection in people who are not already HIV positive but are at risk of exposure. In contrast, Harris said, during former President Donald Trump's term in office, he took away protections against discrimination for LGBTQ patients under the Affordable Care Act. Trump took away protections for LGBTQ workers, they banned transgender service members from the military, and they eliminated policies that protect LGBTQ students, she said. If Donald Trump wins in November, he'll once again implement policies that target the LGBTQ community, Harris said. And now he has a new running mate who opposes marriage equality. Provincetown's been the site of several high-profile political fundraisers, many hosted by Raffanelli and his company Raffanelli Events. Jill Biden headlined a Biden-Harris fundraiser last July. Former President Bill Clinton, former presidential nominee Hillary Clinton, pop icon Cher, and Buttigieg have also made fundraising appearances. Raffanelli called Provincetown a melting pot last month. There's no question that people in Provincetown care about the United States, he said. It's the right time and the right place to bring the vice president here, Raffanelli said. Harris made other stops before arriving on the Cape, including in Fayetteville, North Carolina, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, she said. I'm in these streets, she said. This is Harris's 15th trip to the state since taking office, according to the White House news brief. In her speech, Harris called Project 2025 a 900-page blueprint for Trump's second term in office should he win the election. Project 2025, she said, includes a plan to attack marriage equality, threaten in vitro fertilization, and weaken protections against discrimination in health care, education, and in the workplace. Project 2025 is proof that if Donald Trump wins, he will continue to attack equality, take away freedoms, and undermine our democracy, said Harris. We're here today because we all understand what's at stake in this movement, she said. During her speech, Harris said winning the election won't be easy. Anything worthwhile takes grit and believing in something and going forward, she said. Biden, she said, thinks about how every decision he makes impacts everyday folks and working Americans. When you look at what we've already accomplished, it's clear Joe Biden's one of the most consequential presidents in American history, she said. He always remembers who he's fighting for. He's fighting for the American people. Bethany Patton of Boston, who stood in line Saturday for the Kamala Harris event, said she was attending because she does a lot of work in climate change policy. So I want to support any administration that's going to care about climate. Patton added that she hoped Harris would give messages of hope at the event. Watertown resident Jeff Bouchard also was headed to the event. I'm very excited just to see her and hear what she has to say and see the other Massachusetts and Boston leaders who are here, Bouchard said. It's an interesting moment. I'm curious what kind of message they have. I hope we're going to hear something unifying, but also optimistic. Editorial note, staff writer Marianne Bragg contributed to this story. The third local story in today's Cape Cod Times is titled, What Are Cape Codders Saying About Biden Exiting the Race? This is reported by Zane Razak. Hours after President Joe Biden announced he was no longer running for re-election, U.S. Representative William Keating was quick to endorse Vice President Kamala Harris as his successor. As our country faces threats to our personal, civil, and financial rights from the prospect of a Trump-Vance administration, I'm excited to support Vice President Harris as our Democratic nominee, said Keating in a statement provided to the Times. A Harris presidency will protect women's reproductive rights, protect Medicare, and continue to cut prescription drug costs and expand health care access for all. and a Harris presidency will keep our nation safer and more secure from global threats. Keating, who represents the Cape and Islands in Congress as part of the 9th Congressional District in Massachusetts, also praised Biden as one of the most effective presidents in our history. Inflation is down, the stock market's at an all-time high, and Joe Biden's term as president has not just been a success, but a historic success in moving us from the economic and healthcare crisis of the pandemic to the #1 economy in the world, said Keating. As if the last 4 years didn't already make it clear, today firmly demonstrates that Joe Biden is the antithesis of Donald Trump, putting country ahead of personal ambition. Biden began to face mounting pressure to step down and questions around whether he could effectively campaign for president after his poor June 27th debate performance against former President Donald Trump. Biden endorsed Harris in a social media post on X, formerly known as Twitter, for the Democratic presidential nomination. In her own statement, Harris said she intends to earn and win this nomination, and she will do everything in my power to unite the Democratic Party and unite our nation to defeat Donald Trump and his extreme Project 2025 agenda. On Saturday, Harris came to Cape Cod to attend a Biden Victory Fund fundraiser at Pilgrim Monument and Provincetown Museum, as you heard in our earlier reportage. Guests included Governor Maura Healey, Senator Ed Markey, State Senator Julian Sear, Mayor of Boston Michelle Wu, and Delaware State Senator Sarah McBride, who's widely known as the first transgender state senator in U.S. history, according to co-host Alex Ritchie. Christopher Lozon is a Republican running to replace Sear in the Massachusetts State Senate. He said Sunday, "We all pretty much saw it coming this last few weeks regarding Biden's dropping out. He lost the confidence of his party and the American people in general, whether he was even capable of carrying on," said Lawson. "Even if he's replaced as the nominee, which obviously now he will be, people are going to remember these policies and the Democratic politicians that went along with those policies. Rising inflation, open borders. Those are the things that have cost Massachusetts a significant amount of money." In statements posted on social media, Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson and J.D. Vance, Trump's pick for vice president, called on Biden to resign as president entirely if he's unfit to run as president. I think that question certainly needs to be raised and seriously considered. If he's not capable of campaigning and continuing as president for another term, I would question if he's capable of finishing out his other term, said Lozon. Sear called Biden's announcement patriotic and selfless. He's been a remarkable president whose administration has shepherded our recovery from COVID-19. The Biden-Harris administration has been instrumental in solving big challenges Cape Codders and Islanders face, said Sear. He pointed to the $1.7 billion in federal funding to replace the aging Sagamore Bridge as an example, and called the Trump administration a non-option, saying, "We won't get another dime from the federal government to replace the Bourne Bridge." As one of the attendees to see Harris at the Provincetown fundraiser, Sear said he felt he had a front-row seat to history. She celebrated Provincetown's spot as an LGBT+ inclusive place, he said, closing her speech with a remembrance of her former campaign manager Jim Rivaldo, who also managed campaigns for gay rights leader Harvey Milk during the 70s. "It was a really powerful day. She was electric and phenomenal. I'm excited to work hard to elect her as our next president," said Sear. Our next story from the Cape Cod Times, dated Tuesday, July 23rd, Cape Pond Update. Long Pond in Marston's Mills is under a health advisory, by Eric Williams. If you're a fan of swimming in Cape Cod ponds or your pet has been known to take a dip, it's a good idea to keep up to date with the latest cyanobacteria monitoring information. The Association to Preserve Cape Cod, known as the APCC, along with volunteers, pond associations, towns, and the state, is monitoring more than 100 freshwater ponds for concentrations of cyanobacteria, that's blue-green algae, and toxins that are produced by the bacteria. These toxins can affect the liver and nerves and cause sickness in people and animals. When levels rise, association staff members alert the towns. The towns then may post a prohibition on swimming and other activities in the pond until the algal population drops. What causes it? Well, the blooms usually occur in the late summer, fueled by warm water or high levels of nutrients from fertilizers, runoff, or wastewater seeping through the soil. But Cape ponds remain warm into the fall, and algal blooms have occurred as late as December, according to officials. So here are the Cape Cod ponds that are under alert or watch for cyanobacteria. In Barnstable, Long Pond in the Marston's Mills section of Barnstable is under a public health advisory after a sample was taken July 15th. Observed scum was confirmed to be cyanobacteria. The public is advised not to swim in the pond or drink the water. Keep pets away. If you come into contact with the water, rinse off immediately. Note, there's another Long Pond in the Centerville section of Barnstable. It's tested as part of the APCC program, and cyanobacteria levels were found to be acceptable after a test on July 15th. Lovell's Pond in Barnstable is a pond of concern after a sample was taken on July 8th. Observed scum was confirmed to be cyanobacteria. According to the APC, the potential concern status means at the time and place of sampling, results indicate either moderate risk for potential exposure to cyanobacterial toxins approaching but below state standards, or a likelihood for increasing cyanobacteria risk over the next days to weeks. In Brewster, Lower Mill Pond in Brewster is a pond of concern after a sample was taken on July 16th. According to the APCC, the potential concern status means at the time and place of sampling, results indicate either moderate risk for potential exposure to cyanobacterial toxins approaching but below state standards, or a likelihood for increasing cyanobacteria risk over the next days to weeks. Upper Mill Pond in Brewster is a pond of concern after a sample was taken on July 16th. According to the APCC, the potential concern status means at the time and place of sampling, results indicate either moderate risk for potential exposure to cyanobacterial toxins approaching but below state standards, or a likelihood for increasing cyanobacterial risk over the next days to weeks. In Harwich, West Reservoir in Harwich is a pond of concern after a sample was taken on July 16th. Observed scum was confirmed to be cyanobacteria. According to the APCC, the potential concern status means at the time and place of sampling, results indicate either moderate risk for potential exposure to cyanobacterial toxins approaching but below state standards, or a likelihood for increasing cyanobacterial risk over the next days to weeks. In Mashpee, Ashamet Pond, located on the Mashpee-Falmouth town line, is a pond of concern after a sample was taken on July 17th. Observed scum was confirmed to be cyanobacteria. According to the APCC, the potential concern status means at the time and place of sampling, results indicate either moderate risk for potential exposure to cyanobacterial toxins approaching but below state standards, or a likelihood for increasing cyanobacteria risk over the next days to weeks. Here's a note. If you notice pond water is scummy or discolored and may have a strong odor, the association advises the public to avoid contact with the water. If you see what might be a suspicious cyanobacterial bloom, notify your local health department and send a photo to cyano, that's C-Y-A-N-O, at the ampersand, apcc.org, noting the location, date, and time, cyano at apcc.org. Editorial note, Eric Williams, when not solving curious Cape Cod mysteries, writes about a variety of ways to enjoy the Cape, the weather, wildlife, and other subjects. The next headline in the Cape Cod Times of July 23rd, Swimmer dies after pulled from water during triathlon, by Zane Razak. A Nantucket triathlon participant died on Saturday morning after they were pulled unresponsive from the water at Jetty's Beach, according to the Nantucket Fire Department. The person was visiting from Connecticut. Their name, gender, and age has not been released as of Sunday. The event requires a 600-yard swim, a 13.5-mile bike ride, and a run of 3.4 miles. Firefighters responded to the beach when lifeguards called for help at 7:01 a.m. The swimmer was brought to shore by lifeguards at 7:05 a.m., and advanced life-saving intervention began 2 minutes later, according to the fire department. The patient was stabilized and taken by a lifeguard ATV to an ambulance waiting in the parking lot, which then brought the person to Nantucket Cottage Hospital for further medical treatment. The person was pronounced dead at 8:05 a.m. The Nantucket Fire Department is profoundly grateful for the lifeguards' quick actions and heroic efforts. Their prompt response and coordinated efforts allowed the patient to be treated and transported to the hospital efficiently, reads the release from the fire department. We are at the midway portion of our reading, and this is normally when we would move to a different kind of local news, the obituaries and death notices that are listed in the Cape Cod Times, but there are none in today's Cape Cod Times. So we will move right on to the Cape and Islands section, where the headline reads, "Wind Turbine Blade Pieces Are Picked Up Off Chatham Shores" by Zane Razak. Debris from the damaged GE Vernova wind turbine blade was found about 3.5 miles southeast of Monomoy Island in Chatham, according to Vineyard Wind. After the Chatham Harbor Master's office reported on Friday afternoon that debris was in that area, 9 vessels were dispatched there, according to a press release from Vineyard Wind. Debris was recovered around 4:30 p.m. and smaller debris was later found nearby. Vessels continued to collect debris throughout Friday evening and during the day on Saturday. Beginning at 4 a.m. on Saturday, helicopter flyovers began over the Chatham and Monomoy areas. Aerial reconnaissance showed no debris to the west of Monomoy or in the Stage Harbor area as of Saturday morning, but monitoring will continue, the statement read. What to do if you see debris? If the public spots any debris in the water or on shore, they should report it to Vineyard Wind's debris reporting hotline at 833-609-5768, according to the Chatham Town website. Again, that number, 833-609-5768. And report any suspected debris on a Chatham public beach to a lifeguard, or call the police department's non-emergency line at 508-945-1213 if the beach is not guarded. Cape Cod National Seashore staff members are keeping their eyes open for any possible pieces from the damaged turbine, said Susan Reese, Chief of Interpretation, Education, and Cultural Resources, on Monday. Vineyard Wind also notified Truro town officials on Friday about the debris field by Monomoy Island and that some debris could wash ashore on Truro's east-facing beaches in the coming days, according to a statement posted on the Truro website. If the public has updates regarding the debris, they should contact Communications Manager Katie Riconda at kriconda@truro-ma.gov or by phone at 774-722-9867. What happened with Vineyard Wind? All Vineyard Wind 1 operations are halted for now, after part of a blade on one of the offshore turbines broke off and fell into the ocean last weekend. The offshore wind farm is about 15 miles south of Martha's Vineyard, and debris from the blade has washed up on Nantucket's southern-facing beaches, as well as Tuckernuck and Muskeget Islands. The largest section of the GE Vernova blade remained hanging from the nacelle into the week, but more of that remnant fell into the water Wednesday night and Thursday morning. And my apologies if you can hear the people who are working outside of our windows. We can't do anything about that noise. My apologies for that, as well as the quality of my voice today being a little bit hoarse with some laryngitis, but getting better every day. Moving on, there are many pictures in the Cape and Islands section today. They're titled Memory and Honor. And one of the photos has a Jeep with a motorcycle following behind it. The Jeep has a flag, an American flag, and another flag. And the caption or the cut line reads, State Representative Stephen Zarhos, a Republican from Barnstable, follows the procession of Jeeps that carried Gold Star families along the motorcycle route at the 15th annual Big Nick's Ride for the Fallen on Sunday. Zarhos is the father of Marine Corps Corporal Nicholas Zarhos, who was killed in action in Afghanistan in 2009. There's another photo of a long line of motorcycles riding under the American flag. Under a flag flown from a Yarmouth Fire Department ladder truck, bikers come into Dennis Yarmouth Regional High School Sunday afternoon during the 15th annual Big Nick's Ride for the Fallen. The ride is in honor of Marine Corps Corporal Nicholas Zarhos and all of the Cape's 16 fallen military. Zarhos, who graduated from the high school, was killed in action in Afghanistan in 2009. There is a photo of a staff sergeant, a Marine staff sergeant, Paul Burr, saluting riders on Sunday as they pass by DY Regional High School in South Yarmouth. And then finally, a biker flashes the peace sign to a group that gathered Sunday at Dennis Yarmouth Regional High School in South Yarmouth for the 15th annual Big Nick's Ride for the Fallen. It's getting time for the Cape Cod League Roundup as they approach tournament and championship time. We don't normally cover sports, but as the Cape Cod League is definitely unique, obviously, to Cape Cod, it is local. And we'll run down these numbers. In a battle of the two Cape Cod Baseball League division leaders, the East YD Red Sox, who are 18-9, defeated the West Cotuit Kettleers 19-10. 19-10. Apologies, that's their record. They beat them 6-3 in 8 innings at Lowell Park on Sunday. In other Cape League action, it was the Chatham Anglers 7, the Brewster Whitecaps 3, the Orleans Firebirds 5, the Harwich Mariners 4, the Bourne Braves 3, the Hyannis Harbor Hawks 1, the Falmouth Commodores 7, and the Wareham Gatemen 2. We've completed all of the local news in today's Cape Cod Times, so we'll move on to the national and regional news, where we find it on the front page of today's date of July 23rd. What's next for the Democratic Party? After Biden leaves race, questions remain over new nominee, by James Powell and Kinsey Crowley of USA Today. Immediately after announcing he'd drop out of the presidential race Sunday, President Joe Biden endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris, placing her as the presumptive Democratic nominee. The endorsements were made in 2 separate social media posts. The change at the top of the ticket came after Biden won the overwhelming majority of delegates with Harris on the ticket. Harris, who's 59 years old, said Sunday she would seek the Democratic presidential nomination. I'm honored to have the president's endorsement, and my intention is to earn and win this nomination, Harris said. Over the past year, I've traveled across the country talking with Americans about the clear choice in this momentous election, and that is what I will continue to do in the days and weeks ahead. I'll do everything in my power to unite the Democratic Party and unite our nation to defeat Donald Trump and his extreme Project 2025 agenda. The Biden campaign reported to the Federal Election Commission that it raised $127 million in June. Sourav Ghosh, a lawyer at the Campaign Legal Center, told Reuters that Harris remaining on the ticket made the transference of those funds easier. If Harris remains on the ticket as either the presidential or vice presidential candidate, the new ticket would maintain access to all the funds, Ghosh said. Federal law states that a VP candidate has a right to money raised by the campaign, but Dan Weiner, The director of the Brennan Center for Justice's Elections and Government Programs told USA Today that the law has gray areas. It's not crystal clear because I'm not sure if the people who drafted the Federal Election Campaign Act ever anticipated this situation, he said. Questions about Biden's fitness for a second term as the oldest sitting president took on new significance earlier this year when a special counsel report called him an elderly man with a poor memory. Those questions then had dominated the political talk focused on his cataclysmic debate against Trump on June 27th. Since then, more than 35 lawmakers had called on Biden to step aside. Now the party must find a new champion to rally behind with a little more than 100 days until Election Day. Top Democrats that have endorsed Harris for the nomination include California Governor Gavin Newsom, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, and Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. But many Democrats have resisted rallying behind Harris as the alternative. Several others have been commonly talked about as possible replacements, including Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear and former First Lady Michelle Obama. The last suite of primaries took place June 4th, leaving the task of choosing the party's nominee to the delegates who will gather in Chicago next month. Elaine Kamarck, author of Primary Politics, Everything You Need to Know About How America Nominates Its Presidential Candidates, explained in a Brookings Institution podcast that the substantive power to nominate lies with the delegates at the convention, not primary voters. The primaries elect delegates to the convention, but the legal authority for choosing the nominee of the Democratic Party, or for that matter the Republican Party, is not the primaries, it's the delegates voting in convention. And when that happens, you have a formal nominee, Kamarck said. The Democratic National Committee rules for delegates voted in by the primaries say, delegates elected to the National Convention pledged to a presidential candidate shall in all good conscience reflect the sentiments of those who elected them. William Mayer, a political science professor at Northeastern University, told factcheck.org that the Democratic Convention delegate rule allows for pledged delegates to vote for a new candidate. You're kind of encouraged to vote for the candidates for whom you were elected, but in all good conscience, quote unquote, you could vote for someone else, he said. It remains to be seen how the nomination will happen at the DNC, or the Democratic National Convention. The nomination date has already been a pain point for the Democratic Party. While the roll call process of delegates formally casting their votes typically happens at the convention, the DNC Convention Rules Committee has been trying to hold a virtual nomination ahead of the convention. This push came after a legal challenge from a Republican Secretary of State in Ohio. He threatened to keep Biden off the ballot because of electoral deadlines in the state. The committee co-chairs say similar challenges may arise in several other states. When exactly this roll call vote will occur has been a moving target, especially once the movement to replace Biden on the ticket began gathering momentum. If the virtual nomination doesn't happen, Democrats could be looking at an open convention in August. The convention is scheduled for August 19th through 22nd in Chicago, where the party also held a disastrous convention in 1968 after incumbent President Lyndon B. Johnson opted to not seek re-election earlier in the year. Amid anti-war protests and a very divided Democratic Party, the convention is thought to have significantly damaged the party's campaign that year. That year was also the last time the Democratic Party had an open convention. Unlike most modern conventions where delegates cast votes for the presumed nominee based on their state contests, open conventions happen without any presumed nominee. That means the party representatives from across the country would be able to cast their votes for whoever emerged to nominate a presidential candidate. It's wide open. Contributing to that story was Sam Woodward, Aaron Mansfield, Philip M. Bailey, Nick Penzenstadler, Francesca Chambers, Deborah Barfield-Berry, Joey Garrison, Michael Collins, David Jackson, and Michael Loria. all of which of USA Today, and Nadia Sharf of the Indianapolis Star. Delta struggles to recover from cyber interruption is our next headline in the Cape Cod Times today. Many flights are still being canceled on Monday. Customers are left fuming by Rajesh Kumar Singh and David Shepardson of Reuters. Delta Airlines continued to struggle to restore its operations Monday, 3 days after a global cyber outage snarled flights around the world, stranding thousands of customers across the country. The Atlanta-based airline had canceled 778 flights, or about 20% of the scheduled total as of 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Monday, according to data from FlightAware. It accounted for about half of all total flight cancellations. The company's shares were down about 2% at $44.58 in midday trading. By contrast, disruptions at other major U.S. carriers had largely subsided. A software update by global cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike triggered system problems for Microsoft customers, including many airlines, on Friday. A Delta spokesperson didn't immediately respond to requests for comment. Delta CEO Ed Bastian said over the weekend that the outage affected one of its crew tracking tools, and the airline was unable to effectively process the unprecedented number of changes that were triggered by the system shutdown. In a separate note, he told employees that Delta would continue to tactically adjust schedules to ensure safety. Delta is widely respected for running a reliable operation. Analysts say its on-time performance in terms of arrivals and departures has helped the airline cement its position as a premium airline. Since the outage, it's canceled nearly 30% of its flights, according to global aviation analytics firm Cirium. The issue has left many customers fuming. Many complained that they had to wait hours for assistance as the airline's helplines were overwhelmed. Some were forced to rent cars to drive hundreds of miles, while others said they would have to wait days for new flights. I was very disappointed in the way Delta handled this, wrote Bob Perlman on LinkedIn, who had booked a flight from Honolulu to Salt Lake City. Bastian said the outage hit the airline on the busiest travel weekend of the summer, limiting its reaccommodation capabilities. In a staff memo seen by Reuters, Delta said it's doing everything possible to bring stability to its staffing. It has boosted incentive pay for pilots and flight attendants. The single biggest thing you can do to help at this point is to pick up trips in any base, it said in the memo, a request for crew members to volunteer for extra trips. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg said on Sunday his office has received hundreds of complaints about Delta's customer service and asked the airline to provide prompt refunds, free rebooking, and timely reimbursements to customers. No one should be stranded at an airport overnight or stuck on hold for hours waiting to talk to a customer service agent. The next headline in today's Cape Cod Times of July 23rd. Thank you for your service. Now let's win. State reacts to Biden leaving the presidential race, by Caitlin Kelleher of the Cape Cod Times. Mass Democratic political leadership were quick to react after President Joe Biden announced Sunday he was no longer running for re-election. His announcement came after weeks of turmoil for the Biden-Harris campaign. Many within his party began to call on him to withdraw after the president's poor performance at the June debate against former President Donald Trump, the Republican nominee for the president. The president's 81 years old and has held elected office for 50 years, including on a Delaware County Council, U.S. Senator, and Vice President. Here are the reactions of the Massachusetts congressional delegation and Governor Maura Healey, who was one of the first to question if he should withdraw. On Sunday, she issued the following statement. Joe Biden ran for president to restore the soul of our country and defeat the greatest threat our democracy has ever seen, and that's exactly what he did. Few could have risen to the challenge the way Joe Biden has. He has restored our economy, defended our freedoms, and protected democracy at home and abroad. He's led with decency, empathy, and brought Americans together. Biden's decision today not to seek re-election is the ultimate example of putting the country first, something Joe Biden has done over and over again in his unparalleled career. We're all deeply grateful to President Biden for his lifetime of service. Thank you, Mr. President. Earlier in July, Biden saved our democracy in 2020 and has done an outstanding job over the last 4 years, Healy said in a statement that was released to Politico on July 5th. The best way forward right now is a decision for the president to make. Over the coming days, I urge him to listen to the American people and carefully evaluate whether he wants to remain our best hope to defeat Donald Trump. Senator Ed Markey said, from reunifying NATO to passing the largest climate investment in our history, President Joe Biden has helped save democracy and the planet. He has a record unmatched in modern U.S. history, and I'm forever grateful for his service and friendship. Earlier this week, Markey said the decision was up to Biden and his family during a tour of Gardner. Senator Elizabeth Warren said Joe Biden's presidency has been transformational. He accomplished more in the past 4 years to bring back jobs, stand up to big corporations, and build an economy that works for all of us than we've been able to get done in the last 40. He deserves full credit for beating Donald Trump in 2020, and his selfless decision today gives us our best shot at doing it again in 2024, she wrote on X. Congressman Jim McGovern said Joe Biden has cemented his legacy as one of the most consequential presidents in my lifetime and in American history. He promised to restore the soul of our nation, and he delivered on that promise, bringing us back from the brink of authoritarianism, rebuilding our economy after a global pandemic, and repairing our standing in the world as a beacon of freedom and hope. What Congressman Jake Auchincloss wrote, Joe Biden's the first president in U.S. history who's had to defend democracy at home and abroad simultaneously, and he has done so admirably. Thank you for your service, Mr. President. Now let's win. Congresswoman Catherine Clark said today's announcement embodies President Biden's steadfast courage and patriotism. At every point in his remarkable career, Joe Biden has put his country first, advancing the project of democracy and meeting the needs of the American people. What Congressman Bill Keating said, he praised Biden as one of the most effective presidents in our history. Congressman Seth Moulton said he was proud of our president, who will go down in history as a great statesman, and proud to endorse our vice president, who has the energy, courage, and vision to beat Donald Trump. Now let's come together and get to work. Congressman Richard Neal said, as he has throughout his career in public service, at POTUS puts his country first. He will go down as one of America's greatest leaders, delivering the world's strongest economy and making historic investments in our workers, families, patients, and veterans. Thank you, Mr. President. Well, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley said, Pressley, who's a progressive Democrat, had said she supports Biden remaining at the top of the ticket and had said, we're losing the plot here, according to ABC News earlier in July. On Sunday, she released an endorsement of Vice President Kamala Harris, who Biden encouraged to run in his place. Thank you for your dedicated service, President Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I'm all in. Let's go. #BlackWomenLead. Pressley tweeted, along with a photo of herself and Harris. Congresswoman Lori Trahan said Joe Biden saved our democracy in 2020, and he has worked with House Democrats to deliver unprecedented progress for the American people. President Biden's decision to pass the baton positions us to defeat Donald Trump again this November and to build on the work we've done, wrote Representative Lori Trahan. Massachusetts Democratic Party issued their statement. President Joe Biden will go down in history as one of the greatest leaders our nation has ever had. In the decades that he has spent in service to the American people, there has been no one more committed to decency, no one more fluent in compassion, no one more fervent in his dedication to each and every cause that might improve the lives of the people he represents, reads a statement from the Massachusetts Democratic Party. It takes a man of great honor and breathtaking humility to commit his entire life to the service of others, and we're incredibly lucky to have a president who possesses perhaps the greatest trait of any leader, the willingness to relinquish a position of power and allow another to take his place, they wrote. The Biden administration has been some of the most progressive years in our nation's history. He led us through a pandemic, codified same-sex marriage into law, championed student loan forgiveness, and passed a bipartisan infrastructure law that infused funds into countless communities. And he did it all with the same down-to-earth, empathetic style that caused the people of Delaware to elect him to the Senate back in 1972. And now, by making the selfless choice to step aside, he's set the Democratic Party on a course for the future in which all of us, everywhere, are motivated not by preservation of the status quo, but by those bold, decisive, but necessary actions by which we change society for the better. Joe Biden believes in a better world, in a world that views us all as equals and aims always to preserve our rights and freedom. Soon there'll be more to be said about the man he beat to take the White House and the urgency of the work that must be done to ensure the poison he aims to spread across this country is resoundingly rejected. For now, though, our message is this. Thank you, President Biden. What Trump's Massachusetts campaign chair, Thomas Hodgson, said. I don't think anybody expected it to be any different. The Democrat Party has been hiding what everybody else has seen for a long time. He's not capable of being president for another term, and frankly, he isn't capable of being president right now. He's cognitively challenged, and everybody knows, and so for us, for America, that's not a good thing. Who knows how it'll play out? If he continues to stay in there, as I said, it's not a good thing. But given the fact that he's never there, he works limited hours, well, it's the best thing that could happen, and frankly, should have happened a lot sooner. We'll finish off our reading with a little bit of advice. And this is from Carolyn. Carolyn Hacks. Was it wrong to block SILs to focus on Mom's funeral? Dear Carolyn, my mom died just a couple of weeks ago. I was her primary caregiver. My brothers both live about an hour away from me and have circumstances that kept them from visiting as frequently as any of us would have liked. But we supported one another in whatever ways we could. During my mom's decline, my brothers' wives spent a good deal of the time not speaking to us and refusing to be in the same room with one another over nothing, really. Their rift added a strain that wouldn't have existed in my family. When they finally made up, it was a relief. Not even 2 full days after our mom passed, both of these women were suddenly blasting me via direct message, the family group chat, and a long haranguing voicemail accusing me of making all the decisions for her funeral by myself, berating me for meeting with a funeral director on my own, and demanding a Zoom meeting so we can all, in capital letters, be involved in the planning. I tried de-escalating by assuring them I'd conferred with my brothers, emphasizing with them for feeling left out, and empathizing, and asking for their grace and understanding as we focus on burying my mom who'd just died. And they responded with things like, "What do you mean, your mother? And how can you ask for grace when all you have to do is move the funeral one day to accommodate a trip to visit her relatives?" Well, I got tired of being spoken to like that, plus my mom had just died in my arms 36 hours before, so I told them I was blocking them until their husbands let me know everybody was ready to hug and apologize. I said, "Love you," and peaced out. I also moved the funeral one day because why not? Both women avoided me at the wake and the funeral. Am I the jerk here? What should I do? Signed, Family Drama. Dear Family Drama, I'm sorry about you, Mom. You're not the jerk. And your steps were necessary, and had decisive panache, I might add. You've done your mom proud. Now what you do is live your life. These women will either crawl back or they won't. Gutting yourself in the meantime over mistakes you didn't make won't affect the outcome enough to be worth the distress. Where are your brothers in this? And with that great advice, we've come to the end of our reading of the Cape Cod Times, dated Tuesday, July 23rd of 2024. This is your reader, Eric, saying be well, be safe, look after each other. Remember our veterans, especially those we've recently lost. Bye for now.